This conference will now be recorded.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is the Harwich Affordable Housing Trust. Pursuant to the Governor's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 38, Section 20, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict implementation on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Harwich Affordable Housing Trust is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person or member. Hold on.
It's very melodic.
I just muted everybody but me. I'll unmute in a moment. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public may adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen or view the meeting while in progress may do so by logging in or to the specific agenda noted above.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm still hearing an echo. Does somebody have a phone and computer on?
Yes, I do.
Hold on. Oh, no, Larry is muted, but somebody does have double volume on.
Is there anyone with a cell phone and sounds like it's okay. Okay, we'll move along then. Everybody get a chance to pull the minutes?
Yes.
Yeah.
I would move the minutes be accepted as published.
Okay, Larry's moved.
No. I'll second that.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, point of order. You do need to do a roll call vote.
Oh, that's right. But I still haven't gotten past Judith just seconded. First, I'm going to ask, does anybody have any comments about them? Corrections, changes, anything? Okay, hearing none. Brendan?
Is this for roll call or here?
Well, okay. Judith?
Yes.
Larry?
I'm in favor.
All right, and I'm here, and I'm in favor.
I'm in favor.
Okay, we good to go now? This is the
Yep.
major part of the meeting is Laura, and I'm hoping you guys have the opportunity to look at the RFP to see if it gets us where we want to go. I mean, because this is really important. This is something that we can do. It's something I think we not only should do, but we got several neighbors who are already in support of it. So this would be an excellent thing for us to move on like as soon as we can. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Laura first.
Muted. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Laura Schufeld. As you know, I'm Acting Director of Community Assistance at MHP. And with me is my colleague, Katie Bossy. We put together a very first draft of the RFP since we had some input last time. But as you can see, it's a pretty detailed document. We did not get to the criteria because first we have to get the basic document in place, and then we can talk about the evaluation criteria that you would move forward with. I didn't see it mentioned in the agenda, but Bowler also did 2 conceptual plans that I sent along. I don't know if the committee got them, the board got them or not. Charlene, do you know?
They did get
The long packet.
Is this it?
Okay. Yep. No, I don't know if that was it or not.
that was it.
That was one of them.
Has your name on it.
Okay. So I want to kind of start there a little bit because let's fill in the blanks. So I asked at the last meeting, you had the due diligence for the kind of more around the septic system that showed 16 units. And it seemed to be the consensus that that was, you know, maybe too many units. And that you were looking at, you were hoping to get quads in there. And I didn't really have a clear direction on how many, but I had Bowler just draft, in one case, 2 quads, and that would be 4 1-bedrooms and 4 2-bedrooms. And you have that conceptual plan, which I think was labeled A. And the second conceptual plan was labeled B, and that had the 2 quads plus a 3-bedroom kind of standalone townhousey single family. And if you remember, I told you that under the state kind of agreements, that any projects that go forward that are not age restricted are able to get a waiver from DHCD. So concept A would be that all 1s and 2s, assuming you could get a waiver, and concept B was 8 units of 1s and 2s, and then a 9th unit with the 3-bedroom. So I wanted to get your feedback. Is it too many? Is it too few units? They're 2-story. Maybe the 3 is a 1.5-story kind of thing. Maybe, you know, could be either. Just kind of get some feedback on those concepts, because it can help me fill in the blanks for what you want for evaluation criteria.
If you guys don't mind me kicking this off, it appears that the one that has the extra 3-bedroom unit is going to become important because we lease a property to the junior theater. Has 4 less parking spaces, if I'm counting right, or fewer parking spaces. I'm just concerned because when they actually are rehearsing for shows, and this is what we leased them the building for, it looks to me like they're using about 15 parking spaces themselves.
Isn't the idea that they would use the parking spaces over in the Historic Society? In other words, the residential parking would be separate?
I don't know that that's what they think. And they're one of the people that sent us a letter of support. I just want to make sure that we've got that buttoned down, because I would hate to see this go out and then have them say, that's not what we thought we were going to agree to. I'm just bringing it up. I'm not saying yes or no.
Okay, I think they have 8 parking spaces now.
Okay.
Is what Bowler told me. So I think they tried to maintain their 8.
How's he counting that 8? Because that entire unpaved parking lot gets used. Seems to me, I don't know. I mean, Charlene, there was never a real site plan for that when we conveyed that under the lease, right?
In all honesty, Don, I was not here then.
Okay.
But as Judith said, you know, I was kind of under the assumption that they would have the ability to use the parking that's along Parallel Street and also next to the Brooks Academy building.
Okay.
Brooks Academy, that's it, yeah.
This is a nation's discussion anyway, so what I'll do is I'll get in touch with Nina and make absolutely certain that that's her understanding of this. But I'm not going to let the discussion stop on this point.
Okay.
Any other members?
Do you want us to give our thoughts on this, or?
Yeah, she would like input to be able to put
so,
language stuff.
Sure. I really like the Plan B, because I believe that there are a number of families that need housing, and So if you have two children, one is a boy and one is a girl, there's your 3 bedrooms right there. And I also like that the driveway is horseshoe, because that's traffic comes zooming up Sisson Road there, even though it's supposed to be 20 miles an hour, I think, when you get to the top of the hill. But I think that would make for I'm not a traffic person, but I'm assuming that that would make for a easier traffic flow if it were like in one way or other. I don't know if that's factored in at all.
Well, if it went to a site plan, it would get factored in because ultimately they would look at things like traffic flow and numbers of spaces. Correct me if I'm wrong, Laura.
No, that's right. And these aren't, you can't tell someone this is what they have to do. These are just like examples of what, you would like to see, or what you would just, similar to what you would like to see. So with the
to a developer, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, so the buildings are to the front, it's to the back. Relatively the same number of parking spaces. There, I think in the 8 unit, there's 13 that are just 13 or 14 that are just kind of associated with the housing. And then the junior theater has a number as well. 10 or 11. Okay. Anyone else have any thoughts?
Let's move on. Brendan, do you have any comments on it?
Actually, I got bumped out of the meeting for the last about 5 minutes here, so I kind of missed everything that was said, but I'll just
Because we
listen.
were talking ill about you.
Say it again?
Good, because we were talking ill about you.
So I figured it was a good time, but no, I'll just I'll pass for now.
Larry?
No, I have no comments. I think you're doing fine.
Yeah, but
Any preferences?
don't misconstrue my first comment.
Both nice. I'm not.
Okay.
Yeah, I like both, but
Is there anything that you want us to walk through with you to make absolutely certain that we get what you're doing?
Yeah, in the RFP, and this was kind of just a first, so I can get some parameters around number of units, which is step 1, pretty much. Because the junior theater is leased, I assume that you're going to be leasing this land and not subdividing it off.
I don't think we've ever had a real firm discussion, but I assume that if we did a 99-year lease, that would work. But it's also conceivable that we give dirt as part of our contribution to buy down the cost of the project.
Either leasing it or conveying it's the same thing. You don't get a lot of there's no benefit to the developer either way.
Okay.
If I might, having been in other communities where there have been, these types of developments, leasing the land is the preferable way to go. In the event something happens later on and the lease has to be broken, the town would ultimately end up back with the property.
No, it doesn't revert back to if there's a reverter clause, it can't get financed. So it's pretty much the same as conveyance with, very few instances of default or control.
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting that there would be language,
Okay.
default, but if for some reason, somebody 40 years down the line, anyway, we'll all be dead by then, except for maybe Belinda and Andrea and Katie.
Right.
What is the difference legally, Laura, though? Because, they can't collateralize the land if it's leased.
It's collateralized by the cash flow in the building, It's, you know, that's
I'm in a
basically how
meeting
it's
coming.
appraised.
Just put it there. Thanks.
It's,
Grab me some water.
water for the woman. It's appraised based on cash flow. So that's how it's collateralized.
Okay.
Okay, let's see. I did get some comments from Charlene, so I'll kind of talk about those. We should talk about it being a shared site, kind of upfront. And we probably should get some parameters around what that means regarding like the parking and the access. Obviously, one concept shows access and parking pretty much dedicated to the junior theater, and the other one has it kind of, you know, meshed together. It's my recollection, because I was working on this a long time ago, that when the town leased the property to the junior theater, they leased basically the building and then just kind of enough land around it to pull in, you know, things on the exterior. But that's my recollection. I could be wrong. So
Yeah, I'm
we need
just,
to check it.
my contribution to that discussion is I'm just concerned that there because I
Right.
get my own parking space.
Exactly. I agree. I agree. Okay, let's see. I'm kind of on the third page of the RFP if you're following, although they're not no page numbers, but the top of page 3 is about affordability. The most I got out of the group last time was that you wanted to prioritize affordability, but didn't really have any specifics. The base that's in here now is that at a minimum, there should be at least 50% of the units affordable to households at or below, and then it kind of just says blank. I guess I'm looking for some input. What would you say the minimum is, and what would be your desired amount of affordable housing?
Larry, you brought this up last time. I'm pretty sure we all agreed that we wanted varying degrees of affordability. We wanted 100% affordability, but not at the same AMI. Is that correct, or? Are you with us, Larry?
Yeah, I would go with the 100%. We can get affordable, but if it ends up being at the 80th percentile and some 65th or the 50th, I don't think it makes any difference to the town as a whole. So
Okay, so 100% below 80%, and extra points if there's a broad range between 30 and 80.
that would
Does
be
that
fine
sound good?
Andrea?
by me.
Yeah, I just wanted to offer that according to the Cape Cod Commission's data, peak housing need for Harwich for renters by 2025 will be at 100% of area median income.
Well, that's what I was kind of saying, is that I thought that we wanted an internal percentage of, some percentage of the affordability to be 80 and some to be 100. So that was break down that way.
I will tell you, I know, you know, we look at availability as being as important as affordability, especially on the lower Cape. But 100% rents are over market right now, if you can find a market. So, and you don't get any subsidy for anything over 80%. So to make a small project work, you almost need to have all of them at 80% or below financially. But we can look at as we get further along, I can look at the financial feasibility and see if we can make it work with some at 100. Just realize that you're not, at least in today's market, which, you know, you're not getting a lot for that. because you're expanding the incomes a little bit, but you're expanding the rents to basically market rents.
I
And
get
then
that.
limiting the market.
We were ultimately, last time talking that we did not want to do, say, 75-25 with market rate
Right.
affordability. We did, whatever that percentage winds up landing at, we did want to make 100% of it at the affordability rate.
Yep. Okay, well, I have some guidance and we'll look at it as take a financial look at it when we get some of the other questions answered. In the RFP, I think we talked about providing design guidelines. That's either we know that we should put the historic commission guidelines as probably in the highly advantageous. That's not requiring it. It's just giving them extra points if they do it. But if you want some minimum design guidelines to put in there without just kind of being loose and saying that it needs to look like things in Harwich and be historic, be the vernacular of Harwich. If you want anything more specific, let us know. We can show you some examples that we've used in other Cape towns that you might want to look at.
Any of the members have any thoughts on that? Okay, don't trip over each other starting.
Okay,
The only
why don't we?
is that I think we could all agree that we don't want a barrack style arrangement like we got from Rudnick down in Route 28. We would find it difficult. There's going to be a lot of resistance if it just looks like a box.
All right, Katie, why don't we repurpose Wellfleet but take out the modern, or keep, just send them we'll just send them the Wellfleet one and then they can look at it and see if any of it makes sense.
Yeah, Laura, that would be great to see that. Thank you.
Yeah. I think
Send that to Charlene.
or
No, I agree. I think if you could send that along, that'd be really helpful.
Yeah, I think send it to Belinda and then she distributes. Okay, great. So I think it's good to have something in there because, you want to be able to judge based on it. You want to be able to score based on it. Let's see, we can get this going. Energy efficiency and, green building. Do you have any, again, we can have what's acceptable and what's highly advantageous. So it doesn't have to be a requirement, but a lot of folks, will add, it has to meet, some kind of guidelines.
Charlene?
I would get much bang for your buck and before you get additional points for solar or for green, or you can get additional points in the judgment.
So renewable, highway.
But Charlene, didn't we accept the state building code that's not too far away from the real high level green?
The town adopted the stretch code.
Yeah.
But technically they could ask for a waiver from that because I don't think the state building code is quite to the stretch code yet.
But I think 40B you have to.
Okay, then that's perfect. And I think as Larry said, if you can, if somebody can do renewable energy through solar, that should get kind of extra points. So to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although we also don't want people mowing down every tree on the site to obtain that. If, you know,
Maybe we talk about rooftop solar versus ground solar, because ground solar is the one where they have to clear the site, pretty much. Great. The site itself, I know in Bowler's due diligence, they had shown two different options. One, a separate septic system from the junior theater, which was their preferred, or basically doing a new system and incorporating the junior theater with it. So do you have a preference? I think keeping them separate makes sense, but I'll defer to what you think.
My gut feeling is if we did a common system, there would be a much larger obligation for the old one-room school building because of the size of the thing. If we just leave that alone and size based on what's being added for its own system, I think it would be a lot better.
Yeah, I agree. Anyone disagree? Okay. Good.
Who will maintain the system?
The developer maintains their system,
Laura,
and the
who
junior theater
will
would,
be responsible for the system?
yeah, the developer or owner would be responsible for the housing, and the junior theater would be responsible for their own. Okay.
And with both,
Okay, let's see. I think,
I was going to say this because it's coming up anyway, but the maintenance of the affordable housing septic systems is really a function of the management company. It doesn't have to be the developer if he's the management to somebody else, right?
right. Sometimes they have their own management, sometimes they have a management company, but if it's in either way, the owner developer is ultimately responsible. Let's see. All right. Experience of the developer. We usually have minimum thresholds of the proposer has to have X number of years experience in housing development. Sometimes we add affordable housing development, and sometimes we just leave housing development depending on what the town wants. And sometimes it's 3 years, and sometimes it's 5, and sometimes it's 10. In this draft, we put 5 years in housing development. So I'm open to what you think. And that's threshold criteria. So if they don't meet that, they don't get scored.
Judith, have any thoughts?
do we have restrictions on the length of time that they would own the project?
Well, this is for minimum credentials. Point is, you can't bid on it.
But is this just for doing, but is it also for management, or is that a separate?
It's not for management.
Do you understand my question, Laura?
No, you kind
just
of
for building.
This is for, how much experience does the developer have coming into the project? Do they have a minimum of 5 years experience in housing development is kind of the middle of the road.
I would say that if they have a minimum of development experience would be 3 years, and you get extra points if you've got affordable or over 5 years, or you continue to manage them. You could probably put it at different levels.
Okay, so that would go in the evaluation.
Brendan,
Or threshold 3 years. And then for evaluation, have it scored. The more experience they have, scored higher and affordable.
Brendan, do you have any thoughts on
No, I agree with what Larry said, but should we just make it specific to, developers that have worked with affordable housing? I mean, obviously, anyone looking to build something this size should have 20 years of building experience in general. But maybe a minimum of 3 years with affordable, anything over 5 would be a bonus.
Yeah.
Okay,
So I think it's the percent, the years you're giving is exclusive to their participating in affordable housing in some capacity.
okay. Another threshold is a successful track record of similar projects with at least 3 references. So, doesn't,
fair? I mean, we don't want a neophyte.
right, exactly. The other 2, one is working towards permitting within 60 days. Working towards permitting is, it's not a big threshold, but so they don't sit on it after they sign the land disposition agreement, that they have the staff and the ability to move forward to get permitting as soon as possible. Okay, let's see. We got affordability, references and interviews or presentations. We'll ask for references, which we'll get checked. Then there's a under the Inspector General's interpretation, if you do interviews, you have to ask everyone the same questions and score it. If you do presentations, you can ask clarifying questions that are particular to the developer or project or proposal, but it doesn't get scored. I find presentations better myself, but I think even though it's evaluation criteria, so you are, with the presentation, you are kind of scoring the whole project as a whole and not little pieces. You've already done the little pieces, and then the presentation just helps you kind of look at it in the big picture. The interview, it's kind of, I find it can be a question of equity, and you know, if it's someone you know, sometimes they get scored higher, and I just, anyway, I prefer that I prefer presentations. That's to me, and we usually have them one right after the other, so then you can compare the thing, you know, the different proposals each. Or you can do none. You can do none of those. Anyone have a preference?
If I might, Don?
Oh, sure.
I think the presentations is a great idea. The presentation, though, would be before the evaluation committee, though, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we do need to figure out who that is going to be. I don't know how you feel, Laura, but generally it's good if it's not necessarily the trust itself or the committee itself, but a couple members, you know, some other entities, like the town engineer is always a good one to have on something like this. You know, and that way, if we're still in this realm of not being able to meet, you know, we may be able to use different platforms other than GoToMeeting, which is not always ideal for presentations. Zoom is much better for that, so it would open that door to allow for that to happen. So just some thoughts there. But I think a presentation is very beneficial.
Further to what Charlene said, conceivably, we could have one person sitting at the table along with the housing committee, or maybe general public, and definitely the engineer. It's kind of a committee of its own.
Yeah, you can basically, you can make up the committee however you want. Typically with trusts, it's the trust plus staff, plus some staffs. No matter who it is, it's an open public meeting for the deliberations. So, you know, you don't have to worry about the forum. It's going to be posted and open anyway. I've found that usually if it's a trust that's doing it, or if it's a housing authority board, that everyone wants to be included. And then they usually add an engineer and a housing committee or whatever, but it's up to you.
For the time being, can't you get past that with language like a presentation will be made to the trust or its designee?
Yeah, you just said there'll be a review committee that will, you don't have to name it yet, but you have to name it before you send the review, before you send the RFP out. You have to say who the review committee is.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You can do all of what we're saying here by putting language in there that the presentation will be made to the trust or its designee, and it allows them to know who has the ultimate authority to put people in front of them.
Yeah, and it'll say that no matter who the review committee is, it'll be the trust to say that they'll bring recommendations to the trust, because it'll be the trust decision ultimately.
I'm with Charlene. I'd really like that. We have a really good engineer, and I'd really like him to be part of the process.
All right, but that doesn't have to be decided now. We'll just call it a review committee, but before the RFP is released, you just have to formally do it, that's all. Okay, well, I think that can get us close to Katie, am I forgetting anything else in the evaluation committee criteria? I think I got everything.
Yeah, I think you got everything. Yeah, I think it's good.
Okay.
Anybody on the committee have any bonus ideas other than what we've just discussed so that we can put this to bed? Because we have the evaluation criteria, we also have what we give extra bonus for.
Well, that's in the evaluation criteria.
I'm just asking, is there anything else that you folks were looking to do to induce certain outcomes? This is it.
I think all it takes, Mr. Chairman, after that is that you just go through and make sure all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. There might be a couple of little technical things, but I'm not going to bring them up.
Yeah,
you can easily do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
I did have one question on the building or the unit configuration. We had language in there that we've used in other RFPs that to encourage universal design, since this is not going to be age restricted. Is that, would you like that to be included?
Personally, one of the biggest problems that we have is we have Pine Oaks 1, we have Pine Oaks 2, we have Pine Oaks 3. They're looking at Pine Oaks 4. We really need workforce housing as a target audience here. You know, our audience, not to be discriminating against anybody, but the crying need is somebody, families starting out at the low end. There's a lot of opportunities for affordable housing for seniors.
Okay. Well, one will have to be, one of the units will be fully accessible.
Handicapped.
That would be the minimum, right?
I'm sorry.
Minimum we'd have to present anyway.
Right, one would have to be mobility accessible and one would have to be sensory accessible, so. Brendan, you're muted.
We can't hear you, Vernon.
Go pass on that
How
one.
about now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
So any shared common space would have to be accessible though.
If there was shared common space.
Okay.
That was another question I had. Sometimes folks put in, language on the landscaping, ask for outdoor common and recreation areas. But I don't know if you want language in there about cohesiveness with the existing building on the site. You had any preferences on that you want included? I did put some in and I highlighted it just to see people's thoughts.
I can put out there without hearing the members of the community is the Sisson Road HJT building was a former, each of the villages in Harwich had its own one-room schoolhouse. So it's historic, not just in its look, but what its function had been. And then you got Brooks Academy. So we have a quasi-control area there right now that it really needs to be at least somewhat compatible.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Brendan, I'm sorry, when you're not talking, can you please mute? Because for some reason, we're getting really weird feedback from your microphone. I don't know why.
All right. Is there anything else? We'll get busy on draft 2 and evaluation
Make
criteria.
one comment, Laura.
Yeah.
This is different from the first go around 18 years ago or something, but I happen to like this. It creates a streetscape, which is a better look and on use of the property than we had thrown them in the back of the building originally.
Yeah. Yeah, I like this, and Buller has a a planning person that does a really good job with these concepts, and they know the Cape really well, and have been to the site a number of times, so they understand what this would be a good. I like having the parking in the back, like we said, and just making it kind of conform with what's in that part of Sisson Road already, with things right on the street.
No, we spent the last 20 years trying to do that in other zones in town, rebuilding things towards the sidewalks and streets. So this fits that criteria. The only question I have is, you're giving them a blob of land and telling them that they can develop it and produce an RFP response based on the use of that land. Is there any bonus or way of setting up criteria so that we can get the streetscape rather than the neighbors behind the building?
Yes, definitely. We can put in that, in the site description and in the evaluation criteria, and we'll have, we'll include the concept plans in the RFP as a kind of an example of what you might be looking for.
Yeah, I was just concerned because you and I both know that the concept plan is not a requirement at all. It's just like, well, here's what we'd like to see.
Right.
But I would like to lock in what we'd be willing to give points for or evaluate towards.
Yeah, yeah, we can certainly say that, it's highly advantageous to have the parking in the back and the buildings along the street and, with landscaping and,
it just feels more like a community rather than just some sort of strip mall.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And it's definitely more aesthetically pleasing to see the buildings in the front than to see cars on a, on the side of the road. So,
Anybody else on the committee have any, or even Charlene too, have any kind of input about, or are we pretty much, Laura's gone through the whole thing at this point. And Katie has, we're not going to ignore it.
and Katie too.
I have no input at all.
Charlene,
Okay.
you have
Looks like everyone's good. All right.
Great.
Well, thank you.
Appreciate the effort. It's really nice to see this starting to move forward.
Yep, good. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks, Katie.
You're welcome.
Okay, so where are we here? Well, we're not at the point of community strategies for this yet because we still won't have a real RFP ready yet. But I will say, and Andrea and Belinda have heard me kind of beat this thing to death as a feeling, but it's really important. First of all, this is a showcase. Second of all, we need to have the community behind us because it's going to be a real rough future for us if we don't wind up starting out of the gate with something that the community feels comfortable with, that they feel like they were part of developing. I mean, clearly it's the first time we've walked out of the door with something. So whatever we do, it really should involve making sure that everybody is a stakeholder rather than picking sides about whether they want to have anything there at all or not. Does anybody disagree or agree? Or Andrea?
I don't have an opinion either way, but I'm just curious when you want to do that engagement, if you want to do it before the RFP is issued.
That really depends on her timeline. We've got two different trains moving out of the station here, and I'd like to be able to get them both into the public. I think you know that I really wanted to get this meeting. We're all getting together. Has to be some sort of normalcy to this because I don't see the engagement working out all that well if it's just a giant Zoom meeting. I mean, I have really strong feelings that community engagement means community engagement, but we are close to phase 3, so it may very well. I know, it just underscores my feelings about this stuff is that ultimately it's like Hollywood Squares with moving squares. And it could only get worse if we wind up having, you know, this type of thing, but instead of 8 boxes, it's like 80 boxes. That's what I was trying to say. I understand you want the timing, but I really think it's going to have to resolve itself collaterally with what the governor's guidance is on what we can and can't do to be able to get together. On the other hand, all kinds of things are doable if we're doing them outside, you know, in the open. So we may be able to plan for something in early midsummer. Charlene.
Don, as you may know, for the municipal vulnerability listening session, we were not to actually hold that. And we actually put together a really good video and then also did a survey. So that may be a way to make a presentation to folks and then get feedback that way. They could either do the survey or send questions and comments directly to me as the planner. But that might be, you know, if we need to get some community engagement, that might be something we can do. Certainly notifying all the direct abutters and abutters within 300 feet, you know, and let them know, hey, this video is available. There's a survey available. We'd love to get your feedback if we can't do it in person or in any other kind of manner.
I think that one of the challenges here is I recognize when things happen that aren't necessarily directly relatable to us, but You can learn things from them. The Royal hearing was just a mess. I would like to be able to physically reach out to people on Parallel Street, I guess it is, even though they're more than 300 feet away, just so we can make sure that, you know, Craig Winston, for instance, people that will be in proximity but not necessarily abutting.
Well, that's all fine, but I think if we want to try and get word out, I think you're right, trying to have a public meeting like this with a lot of people is really difficult. But if you have this video available that people can watch, you know, assuming we can't get together anytime soon, if you want to continue progress and get things moving, that is just an alternative available.
Well, just think of me as the eternal optimist. I think we're going to be able to do it at some point. It's just not today. Andrea?
So, you know, we've talked about this before. I totally hear you on preferring in-person engagement. I just wanted to let everyone know that Chatham did recently hold a forum, a community engagement style forum with over 300 participants, and apparently it went really, really well. So, you know, it can be done, but also Zoom, which I would highly encourage that you use rather than GoToMeeting for the same reasons you described, Charlene. Zoom makes it really easy to break up all of the attendees into smaller breakout sessions. I mean, you can get people meeting in groups of 4 if you want. So there's tools out there to help make a virtual setting work if that's the only option. And the only reason why I'm asking all of this is that implementing any effective community engagement strategy takes time, and we usually don't do these things over the summer. So given our RFP timeline, I'm just a little concerned about having enough time to do this properly for you.
Well, there is a problem then. I mean, because ultimately, I know you're saying you don't typically do them in the summer, but sadly, the opportunity for us to have something even quasi-public in the near term means you're talking summer. Otherwise, if we get a second wave in the fall, which a lot of people are talking about, even in the state government, that would preclude anybody meeting together.
Yeah, and I just want to throw out there that, I mean, in the last 2 months, I've been on probably 5 different conferences where they have been hundreds of people, and we've done the breakout sessions, and it works really well as long as you've got not me controlling the buttons, but somebody that knows what they're doing. It really works well, Don. And I think we could get that going over the summer. I mean, it's not like people are hanging out at the, well, maybe they are hanging out at the beach. It's
well,
a little.
We do both. We start with an underlying electronic outreach. And if we have the opportunity as the next few weeks evolve, and it looks like we might be able to get a limited number of people in a room, that could be another add-on to it.
And is there any reason why we can't use Zoom, Charlene, from a town perspective, or do we have to use?
I have an answer to that.
Okay.
Neither does the selectman. I have no idea.
Okay.
I could take that up with the board and with the interim town administrator and see what.
There were security issues with it 6 weeks ago, but they've amped everything up. So.
I don't think that was the deal. It was more or less an edict that all governmental activities would be conducted through GoToMeeting. So I have to find out how hard and fast that is. Okay. Or whether we could break out into a different platform, because I've used 4 of them myself, and they're all different in what they're capable of doing. Microsoft's got one itself.
Also, if I might, I do believe the GoToMeeting, now that I think of it, was also for security purposes. Zoom, you were able to hack into it, and some other medias, but this one has, the GoToMeeting is way more secure for these types of meetings. They can't be hijacked.
Well, let me find out what we have to deal with, and then I'll get back to Andrea and Belinda so we can at least start thinking about how that engagement looks before we have another meeting. that sound okay to you guys? Okay, so pretty much I'm just going to say same to item D, because I have the same feeling about, I talked with Avery about this, same concerns. Second chance to make a first impression, and I would really not want to mess up our coming out party by getting stakeholders engaged when we're not really getting them engaged, because they're not really part of anything other than a conference call.
Good your your first date out. Yeah, you don't want to make a mistake.
Yeah, and she understands. I mean, I've told her we definitely still want her to proceed, but it's just a question of right now, it's not really to get the collateral advantages of having some sort of meeting structure, you know, personal meeting structure. She said we're not the only people that are having that problem.
I know. Okay. Onward.
I mean, it's the pandemic. It's not that we're being grumpy. It really, we weren't really effective on the PR part of things early on, and it would be really nice to be able to both get a structure developed for operations, but also use that as an awareness mechanism. And you're preaching to the same choir at the moment, because people mostly have been sitting there more worried about their video on demand than they are about watching town meetings.
Yeah, town meeting could really be fun.
Well, again, I'm just explaining why Avery's not in front of you today, and probably won't be next month either. Mainly because we need to be able to get something out of this. I've said this to every one of you at a different point in time, but I don't want to bleed us out by having another consultant come in to try to do community engagement after we come up with our plans of operation, because we're not going to wind up with anybody with a roof over their head eventually if we just keep spending money on consultants. I'd like to be able to get a double benefit out of this. And Avery understands that.
Agree with you completely.
Judith, you...
No, I'm all for moving forward. You know, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, but the forward part means that we're probably going to be pausing for about 4 or 5 weeks until they can actually move forward with something outside of a computer screen. Brendan?
Can you repeat that, Don? Sorry.
Yeah, right now we're stuck in electron land. We're all looking at each other on a computer screen, and she's thinking of trying to proceed forward with stakeholder meetings and other things like that, and using the same platform. I still feel that we need to be able to get into a room with some of these people so that it actually has the feel of we want to hear from you.
Well, I think there's enough room at Brooks Park if we took reservations in advance.
Well, that's a suggestion. There is a way of doing some of the stuff in the summer physically outside, because the weather will be.
Of having an organized event at Brooks Park, and like approximately how many people might be able to safely fit?
I don't know, but we are still under the guidance that you're only allowed to have 10 people in a group outside. So I'm not sure how you get around that.
Well, if we had them on a blanket and we placed them like it's 12 feet apart from each other.
Yeah, because the high school is doing the graduation out on the field. Or are they doing 10 kids at a time?
Not
I happen to be married to the chair of the Board of Health, so I'm telling you, based on everything I know from the selectmen's side and from the health side, Charlene's right. but I actually think we're going to hit the next phase within the next 2 to 3 weeks if the trend continues the way it is. Right now, though, we're not allowed to do that.
And if I might, I'm hearing from a lot of different folks, I'm sure
Okay.
you guys are too, but a lot of people are just not comfortable even going near people other than people that they know. So you're still going to have to take that into account, that no matter what you do, you're still going to have some kind of online presence where you're doing a presentation that people can log in, because people are not feeling comfortable going out to, large crowds or even small crowds. People just aren't there yet. They're not comfortable.
That makes me feel better. So that's why nobody wants to go near me?
There's other reasons for that.
All right, well, I think that's as close to a resolution as we're going to get. If we wait another 2 or 3 weeks, it'll become apparent about what we can and can't do.
It becomes a little clearer then, I would hope.
Other communities must be doing this and for other things.
Actually, Avery said to me, interestingly enough, that we were certainly not the only people that were putting the brakes on and the hiatus. I'm not suggesting we wait months. I'm just saying that I think it'll be apparent what we're capable of doing, because it's going to hit a peak of optimal health, if you will, to happen. And I think it's going to be this summer. So if we don't wind up with an ease up with anything, by say the next 2 or 3 weeks, then I think we're pretty much going to have to agree that Zoom have available to us for the near term. I'm just the optimist.
And we would be, we have to make all the abutters will absolutely receive something in the mail.
Yeah, that's a.
Then the Chronicle will do a story, right? Yeah, let's take a deep dive right into the Zoom or another platform other than this one. Another platform that can do rooms,
Well, in the meantime, Charlene, who reaches out to the abutters? Would that be the trust itself with return receipt mail or what?
Oh, if we did return receipt mail, we don't have enough money. Return receipts are close to $8 now. And the multifamily behind this property, you're talking hundreds and hundreds of dollars. We don't have those funds. What we can do is make a nice flyer up and just send it first class mail out. I wouldn't suggest a postcard, but we can certainly, we can get the labels and everything like that. But, we would want to send it out regular, first class mail and just make it something that people are going to notice the best we can.
Okay, can we spend the next few weeks then on developing that flyer and getting the address list so that we're out before the next meeting, or is that possible?
Well, until you know when you're doing something, I think it's premature to, certainly we can get the list, that's not a problem. But until we know what we're doing, when we're doing it, and how we're doing it, there's no point putting something out in the mail, in my opinion.
Andrea?
Yeah, I could use some clarity. I feel like we're starting to conflate the action plan with citizen road engagement.
Yeah, the action plan's the action plan.
Right. Both of them require engagement, but they're probably going to be very different approaches and somewhat different audiences. So can I offer that we can start putting together some strategies for you all to think about for the next meeting for the citizen road engagement? And then, Don, just say when you want to have Avery come back to talk about the opportunities based on whatever's going on in July or August for the action plan engagement.
Yeah, I misspoke because what Charlene and I were talking about is essentially the Citizen Road project. I mean, we wouldn't be able to mail everybody in Harwich something either. That's prohibitively expensive.
Yeah.
All right, well,
John, just one last follow-up on the Sisson Road, and that's where I was going to with Sisson, not the action plan. My apologies. As far as butters, how far do you want to go? We can do whatever you want, 300, 400, 500.
I want to fan out to,
what radius?
I want to fan out to the end of, at least in addition to that, the residents parallel between bank and system.
Okay. All right, I'll figure out what that is and I can get that in the works.
I think it worked out reasonably well that instead of imposing this on everybody, we wound up getting letters of support because we kind of reached out to the Junior Theater and the Whataburger. So I really feel like if it doesn't look like we're trying to put a fast one over on anybody, that everybody has a stake in this and we want to engage in them, that we got a much better shot. All right, can we move on then? The rental assistance program. When last we left you, if you recall, there was a pitch by Hack, by David, for a new rental assistance program that was being administered by Hack. Again, I think it's a real fast way for us to exhaust funds, but I came up with an idea and I pursued it with Dave Nixon, who's the CPC chair, and I've spoken to some members of the Harwich Housing Authority and staff there. They are expiring on their, we already have an existing rental assistance program. I know they're not the same programs, but they're in trouble. They age out on the money they have on June 30th. And we're not having our town meeting until September 28th. They have an article that CPC is sponsored that's going to be in the town meeting. But in the meantime, there's that 3 months. And I wanted to be able to pitch to the members of the trust here. And again, David Nixon became an important person to follow through with because it largely would be spending what had been CPC money given to the trust. I'd like to, away from spending their money, I'd like to be able for the trust to give them money to float to the end of September at the current monthly rate that they're doing rental assistance. I don't think it's fair for the people that were getting the rental assistance for them to say, whoops, couldn't hold a town meeting, so we don't have any money left. I open that up to discussion.
I would agree with the chairman. I think that if we effectively lend the money to them, it comes back to us, and it helps out for a tough period of time for people that may not have the money. And I would think at least we can get some good press out of that, and I don't see anything wrong with that.
And we're not talking large amounts of money. We're talking maybe between 20 and 30,000. But again, the people who this flows downstream onto were already in a rental assistance program that expires because for a lack of money. They're going to get money, but it's not now that it's happening. So I would hate to see them being held hostage for 3 months. And we can do something without exhausting a large amount of money from the trust fund at the same time as helping out people who are really depending on that.
That's what we're here for, too.
Yeah,
Judith?
I agree. I think it's great. We can allow the housing to keep the rental vouchers in place that they need. And then do we also add on a buffer? There must be more people in Harwich that can take advantage, not take advantage, but that need supplemental. Why shouldn't we just give, instead of giving them additional funds, why don't we give those funds to the housing authority, because they already have the system set up here in Harwich, and individuals can apply.
Well, yeah, I do, but just to be clear, we're not talking the same kind of rental assistance. HAC is actually talking about an income-based system that's more inclusive of total numbers than what the housing authority is able to. Charlene?
Just to clarify, what HAC was looking for, and correct me if I'm wrong, Andrea, but what they were looking for was assistance for emergency COVID-19 related rental assistance. And what the Housing Authority is doing, a separate program that they've been doing for a number of years, which is just an ongoing rental assistance program that they sponsor. So we're talking emergency COVID related rental assistance that HAP was looking towards. And then what the Housing Authority is their ongoing with rental assistance.
I just want to put this in a context, though. I'm really trying to make sure that we take people who already are getting such assistance and make sure that they have a life preserver here. But
I'm just saying, why not have the COVID?
Yeah, here's the reason. First of all, we got grant money from external sources that we don't have access to. Second of all, we're sitting at about, what, $800-something thousand now. You just had a presentation about Sisson Road. You may require us to do some sort of financial buy downs. If we fritter away the money that we have, the CPC's made it really clear to me that unless something is project driven in the future, if we spend this money down and we don't have any money left to do other things, oh well. I mean, they're not going to entertain giving us money every year unless they start seeing some actual housing. So the housing assistance for the rental assistance would be really nice in a perfect world, but the bottom line here is, where are we going to get our money to replenish anything that we put out if we start buying ourselves down so far we can't do any projects? This was a small percentage of what we were sitting on.
They're in line, Mr. Chairman. I agree that for a short 3 or 4 month loan, we could use those funds, which likely or not will come back to us. And we get good value for it, and we can effectively use the funds twice. Brendan?
Yeah, I was going to, exactly what Larry said. I think it's a great way to build our resume. So I agree with it. Real quick, if we make a decision, are they looking for the money for July 1st, or do we have to vote on it next meeting?
I could, let's put it to you this way. I could get the number, but I first wanted to get some agreement that we were willing to do it. Once I get the number, I still anticipate that we're probably going to have to hold some sort of meeting next week, quick one, just to validate what the number is.
Yeah, I would do that.
I mean, what I'm looking at is that basically it's between 20 and 30, but I'd like to nail it down to an exact figure.
And can we get a letter of support from CPC as well, if we move forward?
It's our money and it's okay with him, but the bigger bottom line here is that they're feeling more, he's feeling more comfortable, and some of the other members are, that we're actually doing something positive with something that they were funding themselves.
Mm-hmm.
That's not going to be possible. So he thought this was a terrific idea, given the fact that they were already approved for funding for a town meeting that never happened.
Okay.
This all would have sequenced perfectly without that. I mean, we would have had a Maytown meeting, we would have had the available funds on July 1st, and everything would have just cruised right along. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, and it will not happen until almost October. Andrea?
I would.
Don,
Larry,
I was just wondering, Don, if you would like me to provide the working group update now, since you're talking about rental assistance, or would you prefer that I wait until the housing coordinator report?
They're two different things. If you could wait, I'd appreciate it, because
Sure.
I'd still like to do this irrespective of anything else. All right, so is it okay with everybody then? I'll get a number. We'll hold a meeting either next week or at the beginning of the week after.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, I would move, if it's acceptable, to allow the chairman to investigate the amount of funds required for short-term or interim loan, as the case might be. And once that figure has been determined, then at the call of the chair, we can hold another meeting if required to approve the expenditures of funds.
It's a long motion, Larry.
And also, if I might, you don't really need a motion, quite frankly.
We can just do it.
If it's a consensus of the board to have the chair go forward, then I think that's appropriate. I do want to note one thing. I found out who CC9 is. I cannot change it on the board, but it is Bill Galvin from the Chronicle. So he is on this call. He is on this video, but for some reason, I cannot change his name.
And nor does he want you to change his name. Hi, Bill. How you doing? Okay, so I'll pursue that. I'll get a number, because the action actually isn't this anyway. For a motion, the action would be agreeing to disperse the money. And I'll get that number, and then I'll see if I can. Hopefully, I can get it tomorrow.
Then, however required, Charlene, you can make my rambling motion into a real motion.
She's saying we don't need one.
A motion for what? You need a motion.
Okay.
I'm getting information. That's all I'm doing. I'm not making any action. I'll find out the number, then we'll come back to a meeting, and then we'll make a motion.
That's fine by me.
Okay, but now that I've heard your voice, and I know the next item is the update on Holy Trinity Church, and that's Larry's.
Okay. I won't take long. Last meeting, Mr. Chairman, I was asked to look into the feasibility of moving the parish hall, this present location, adjacent to the church on Route 28. I asked for, and I was given permission for a trip to inspect the building. I met with the archdiocese, the parish representative, Mr. Nolan, with the pastor of the church, and with a kid. And I got a tour of the building. And from my uninformed opinion, and hopefully Brendan will jump in and correct the things that.
Brendan has actually recused himself.
Oh, he has? Okay.
Minutes need to reflect the fact that Brendan did recuse himself.
And we have a blank camera.
Okay. Thank you. At any rate, I inspected the building. It was built about 100 years ago. Over the span of time, it was several times. It's definitely 3 separate sections right now. One of which, the main section, is probably close to 40 feet tall. Do you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. It's close to 40 feet tall. Well, there's 3 sections: the back section, a front section, the main section. To move it, you'd have to cut it literally in half because it's too tall to move it. The estimate from a moving company was approximately $100,000 to move it. Added to the cost of moving, you'd have to prepare a site. You'd have to put a foundation there. You'd have to hook up to town water and power. That is probably $25,000 to $30,000, a rough estimate. The building itself is pretty much mid-1950s. It's lovely paneling in 4 different styles. There's rugs in every room. They're all different. The stairs themselves look like they should be in Amsterdam. They're pretty narrow and they go straight up in the air. They'd be called leg breakers in Amsterdam. And it would probably cost I'm guessing somewhere between $50,000 and $75,000 to put it into condition where it's livable and reasonable and meets the code. Therefore, when you add all the numbers together, I would say that a minimum of $175,000 to $200,000 would be required to build 1 3-family home. To my way of thinking, we can do far better than that we could pick a site. I say this to Andrea and Belinda. We could pick a site that had 3 or 4 building lots on it. Put an RFP out and let somebody like Habitat for Humanity do it, and we could create 4 units of housing simply by doing that rather than one. So I don't think we'd be getting any real value for our money. And if my recommendation would be that if somebody wants to take it, fine with them, but the Archdiocese, the parish would like to take it down now, make it green space. They have no desire to make affordable housing or any other type of housing. They simply want to knock it down and make the space green, and I don't have any difficulty with it. I can't see that there's a whole lot of things there that recommendation, but I don't think we'd be getting value for close to $250,000 by the time all was said and done for one 3-bedroom house that is ancient at best.
As everybody knows, because there's only 3 of us here that can consider this matter, as everybody knows, I was trying to kill 2 or 3 birds with one stone here. But our primary mission was never to be able to preserve the building for historic sake. It would have been a collateral advantage if we could have done it. But our primary mission is getting people into affordable housing. And if this isn't economical to do that, then the other parts of it don't necessarily mesh with what our objectives are. Judith?
That is the summation.
Thank you for doing all that work. And can I make a motion then that we take this off the table for consideration?
Sure.
I would have no difficulty with that.
Well, how about seconding the motion, if that's the case?
I would second that motion.
Okay, any further discussion on this? Hearing none. Judith?
Aye.
Larry?
I'm in favor.
And I'm in favor. So it's unanimous that we'll move past this. Okay, Housing Coordinator report. Welcome back.
Belinda, do you want to mention the Gomes Way matter before I move on to the agenda items?
Yeah, so I've just been in communication with Beth Wade. She's the Director of Land Acquisition and Project Development at Habitat for Humanity. And she shared that there are 2 Habitat for Humanity homes that inquired about refinancing. So there's also been a coordination with the home program manager at Barnstable County. And they both signed off and sent consent letters. The town admin is also aware of this. So there's no action needed from the trust. Just wanted to give you guys an update. I will be getting in touch with Joe and remind him to send a letter of consent because that is needed as soon as possible. And the second update is I've had 3 resident outreach this past month, kind of ongoing throughout the month, but the same 3 residents about rental assistance, childcare, and food assistance.
Belinda, did you draft a letter for Joe to sign, or did you just ask him a letter? Because if there's specific wording and you want to send it to me, I can type something up, get it on his letterhead, and put it in his folder
Okay, that sounds great.
to expedite it.
Okay.
All right.
Next, Mr. Chairman.
Well, it's still the report, so.
Okay, so I'll provide an update on the working group and tomorrow's meeting because I'm managing those. So an update on the Lower Cape Rental Assistance Working Group is that the group is really getting close to putting up their program guidelines. This past meeting, they established a somewhat optional benefit cap for towns that need one. So just as a recap, because I don't remember how much I told you the last time we met, this is an emergency fund that's specifically for the 8 Lower Cape towns and of a group that's representing each town, as well as the social service organizations that are based within the Lower Cape. And the requirements to be able to access these funds would be that a household would have had to have experienced income loss due to COVID-19 specifically, and benefits within a 12-month period. So this optional cap that was discussed earlier this week by the group is $6,000 per household per 12-month benefit period, and the program is only a year. and the working group will be reconvening on a schedule to be determined to reevaluate this. The benefit cap is based on the idea that households could receive around $500 a month. The towns have discretion about how those funds are allocated. So for example, a household could use its full $6,000 benefit within the first 3 months, and then that would be the end of that. There are also other criteria, such as requiring professional case management, adhering to a set of program outcomes and metrics. And so all of these are going to be written up. But I wanted to let you know that because this is an emergency situation designed to support households who are going to be in dire straits when their unemployment benefits run out on July 31st, towns are going to be approaching their trust to try and access existing trust funds rather than waiting until town meeting for new CPC articles.
I'd like to get 2 clarifications. First of all, this was a block grant, wasn't it? The CDGB?
Nope, this is unrelated.
Where did money come from then? Because I know there is money out there that they're using. So can you enlighten the rest of the trust?
Where this came from?
Yep.
Yep. So back in April, I believe, we started convening these Lower Cape Coronavirus Housing Response meetings, which is the same meeting that's happening on Friday. And one of the outcomes of the very first meeting was that the 8 towns wanted to pursue developing a Lower Cape Emergency Rental Assistance Fund. And so the CDP's role in that has just been facilitating that conversation. And so this would support, one of the guidelines is that it would support households at 50% to 100% of area median income. So this is outside of the Community Development Block Grant funds, because really we're trying to prioritize those for small business support, which is a regional grant that the CDP looks like it's getting from Truro.
I just, first of all, neither the trust nor the Board of Selectmen in this town has voted that position. So I'd be careful about saying that we asked for this, because we haven't asked for it yet as a town.
Correct.
Okay, we're participating in the meetings, but as you said that you convened because we expressed an interest as a town along with other towns, and I know that there is no vote, and I know there wasn't one at the selectman level either. That's not to say that it wouldn't be possible to get a vote, but secondarily, where's the money come through?
So everyone that is part of the working group is going to be requesting existing trust funds. So they will be CPA funds, depending on how each trust is funded.
The actual disbursement.
Well, I guess that would depend on who the town representative goes to the request for. So I guess I don't understand your question, because it would be the trust.
No, I understand. It's the program, who's going to operate the program in the individual.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. And right now I'm the rep from Harwich, and right now there is a 0 commitment from the town of Harwich towards this. If at some point there is a movement to do that, we would have to figure out a mechanism by which, and it may require an RFP, it may not. I don't know if we can do it through the housing authority. That still is to be looked at. We're not that far yet, quite frankly, especially because we're not allocating any funds here in Harwich. But if we do get to that point, then we would have to figure out who's going to administer those funds. So, but right now Harwich is just in a standby mode. I'm still participating in the meetings as I can, just so I'm aware of what other towns are doing.
That's kind of what I was getting at, Andrea. I mean, that's the answer, because if I didn't know, the other 3 trust members probably didn't know either. I just wanted to clarify where we're at and who it was, whether we made a commitment and who.
Oh yeah, no, none of the towns have made a commitment. We're just here to facilitate a conversation so that if towns want to pursue the establishment of these funds within their town, there's a set standard, a regional standard, so that there can be some centralization of access and program administration. Every town needs to decide who is going to administer their program, but almost all of the Lower Cape towns have existing contracts. And for Harwich, your current provider is the Housing Authority, and Tracy and John have been part of these conversations as well. So if Charlene wants to entertain coming to you or speaking with the town about the possibility of being involved in this, then I assume that the housing authority would be implementing it, and they just need to figure out the case management piece.
Okay, and the 20% of me that's still a little confused, because there's a lot of moving parts, and there's a lot of rental assistance being talked about, and they're not all the same rental assistance. The one I talked about originally is something that's been going on for years, in the prior agenda items. I understood that part of the CDBG funds were given a hack to administer, and that's a whole different story than what we're talking about here.
Correct.
They got like basic.
Harwich's existing rental assistance program is the income bracket that is being served. So I believe Harwich is currently capped at 60% of area median income, and this emergency fund would support households up to 100.
Well, the reason I'm trying to delineate this is hack had money
funding.
Yes, and that is not this.
No, we are making sure not to duplicate those efforts. So that's why we are not supporting households at 50% and below, because RAFT is supporting those households.
Okay, I just wanted to get all that out there so that the public understand it, because I didn't quite understand it originally either.
No worries.
Okay, need an action, or you just wanted to let everybody know
this
that?
is an update, just so you know, because everyone's talking about rental assistance, and I want to make sure that you know. And then the other thing, as I mentioned at the last meeting, that we're having these monthly housing, coronavirus housing response meetings. The June meeting is tomorrow, and we have invited several housing developers and property managers that have sites on the Lower Cape to come speak about resident trends and housing development trends that might be of interest to folks. And then we always do town updates, but that is tomorrow, virtually from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. I sent you the registration link if you're interested in participating. That's all I have.
Okay, is that it?
Yep. And then you have the May report in your packet.
Yes. Members, anybody want to pipe in about things they've been up to, or things that they're up to that we haven't hitherto done?
Mr. Chairman, Art Bowden.
Hi, Art. How are you?
Can you hear me all right?
Sure can.
Okay. I just want to, I should have chimed in earlier, but fascinated by all the talking and moved right along real quick. Anyways, I have physically in my hand, I just received a letter from the western abutter to 265 Sisson Road. A nice letter affirming the project, totally for it, and giving her support for it. So I want to get this letter to you. How would you like me to mail it, deliver it, send it, or hang on to it?
Send it to Charlene. She's in the building. Not now, but I mean.
Oh, okay. And I'm right next door.
I'm in the building.
I'll put my mask on and walk over. Okay, I'll do that tomorrow.
You can't get in the building, Art, so you can either mail it, or there's a box at the back of the building. If you put it in an envelope with my name on it, it can.
I'll do that.
And it gets instant delivery.
I'm just saying that because I have a hard and fast rule. I don't like having stuff myself in my house. It really needs to be tethered to the government somewhere.
Okay. One little comment about your the focus group on the project, and it was debated how far to throw the net out looking for abutters. And isn't it in the bylaws? It's up to 500 feet is considered an abutter. I don't know.
Yeah,
What
well,
is it,
there's what you're required to do, and there's what you choose to do.
What are you required to do?
Yeah, but there's what you're required to do and what you might want to do that exceeds that.
Well,
If I
okay,
can
but
answer Art's question just for the
please.
public information. So for the purposes of special permits and comprehensive permits and things like that, either before the Zoning Board of Appeals or the Planning Board, it is it's an abutter to an abutter within 300 feet of the property. For other entities, it may be direct abutters, and for some, it's direct abutters plus anybody across the street. So for planning and zoning purposes, it's the requirement of 300 feet, a butter to an abutter. But we can, as the chair said, we can go out as far as the board would like, but it is the general rule of thumb for zoning and planning is 300 feet.
My only comment would be, I would stay with the general rule. Once you break it, the next time someone's going to say, well, how come I didn't get a letter and I'm 500 feet away? I would stay with the rule. End of conversation. But that's just my thought. Anyways, I'll drop this off tomorrow in a separate envelope. Oh, Don, one thing, when you see the letter, don't get too excited. Your first name has been changed to T something. It was a typo error. So just change it yourself.
I thought it was a Boston accent thing where I became Dawn.
Dawn. It was a T instead of a T. Anyway, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Art. Appreciate it. So back to the members. It's here for you so that you feel like you've got the ability to drive the bus yourselves. So anybody have anything that they wanted to talk about? Otherwise, anybody have anything that they want to see on a future agenda?
I think, Mr. Chairman, I'll chip in first. As a little follow-up for the Holy Trinity Church, I'm anticipating that there's a couple of $100,000 that is in my mind that if we could find 4 building lots that were reasonably quickly usable for permitting and for an RFP and then permitting, we could look at using that money and seeing if we can find something in the relatively near future. And I'll follow it up in the next few weeks if you'd like.
Little confused, Larry. Money that we didn't spend can be used for something else without us spending any money?
Oh, no. The money that we didn't spend, perhaps we will spend.
Okay, got it. So,
okay, that's all I have to say.
We have to take another look on the agenda for next month at what our available properties are and where that might be accomplished.
Good. I'll be in touch with Charlene. She's right on top of her game there.
She's also on top of the screen.
I know, top of left.
Judith or Brendan, do you have anything that you want to pitch in?
Yeah, just to Larry's point, Larry, if you need some help with that, let me know. I think that's very interesting. Other than that, I'm good.
Good. I will be in touch.
And Andrea and I need to have a phone call in about 3 minutes after we undo this. I figured I'd be seeing you today.
Sure.
If we don't have anything else, before we go any further, because I don't want to go through the same situation again. It is my expressed desire to get into the Griffin room, if possible, for the next meeting. So I just need to know 10 days out, if possible, by the time we get to that meeting time, so that we can revert back without it being a panic move. Because I know I put a lot of stress on Charlene's part by getting her stuff within hours of when it could be posted. If we can be kind of a hybrid meeting, I know the selectmen do that, where the 5 trust members plus 2 or 3 staff, and if Charlene wants to do Zoom, or for that matter, if Belinda want to do Zoom, because your own, CDP guidelines, that would be fine too. But I mean, I'd really like to segue back into some sense of normalcy. I mean, I had the approval. I mean, there were reasons for, so I'm not going to get into the reasons because it didn't happen, and that's okay. But if we could do that with a cutoff date of about 10 to 12 days, so that if we can't actually say for sure when we look at each other, yeah, we're in public, then we know we got to revert back to this kind of agenda language. Is that okay with everybody? So we need a date though before we leave.
What, a 5th or a 4th?
Well,
The
that's
third-
the other meeting. I mean, that's a whole different story. That's a driven meeting that we'll see over the next 24 hours what I can get for a money figure for the housing authority. But that's a purpose-driven agenda. It's just one thing. The regular meeting would be
July 16th.
so. Let's say if by July 8th it's not apparent. Yes, sure.
We have 5 Thursdays that next month. It would be my suggestion to err on the side of caution, to give ourselves a little more of a buffer, and hopefully the opportunity to meet in person again, to push it off to the 4th Thursday, which is the 23rd. I don't know if that works for people, but it gives us that extra week of buffer.
I'd prefer that anyway, because the reality is that one of those weeks is the 4th of July week. It's going to be difficult. Nobody's going to be engaged in anything, for that 3-day weekend. So rather than trying to run and catch our own tail, I think Charlene's right. If it's possible for the trust members to move to the next Thursday, that would be a good idea.
Good by me.
Brendan, you're okay? Judith? You're okay. So let's do that then. It's the 4th Thursday.
All right, I do have one other concern.
Yeah.
In that come June 30th, that is the last day that we will have our housing coordinator working for us.
That's what I'm going to have a conversation with her about. And I've got an idea about how to do this, at least pushing the envelope forward, but that's something I need to talk with Andrea about directly. So
Bob and Griffin, who are procurement, because if for some reason there is a lapse, I don't believe I'm going to be able to pick up the slack any more than, posting meetings and that kind of thing.
not expecting you to. What we're really, I'll go over the details with Andrea, but what I'm looking at is us picking this up on a purchase order basis until they can actually get an RFP out and renew something. That'll get us at least 3 months out.
Okay.
But that's what we're going to talk about when we get on the phone. And I'm going to have a conference call with Jay Colburn too over that prospect. I don't anticipate June 30th happens and they pack their bags and everybody walks away. Let me put it to you that way. And we're not anticipating you picking up any slack in that scenario.
I'm holding you to that.
Well, no, because we're concerned about you. We don't want you carrying more weight than you need to right now. There's a lot of stuff going on in town, and you do a lot of work. So we're appreciating everything you do. This isn't a criticism. It's just like we're going to keep moving with the structure that we've got, at least for the time being. How that happens is what I have to discuss. Because the reality was, even with Griffin and Bob Lawton, they're so far behind on town procurements that we were somewhere a mile down on the line of things that they were planning on doing. And I have no control that I can exercise over that. I've made it clear that we have a contract that's expiring and we really need an RFP. I've told the Board of Selectmen that, but Board of Selectmen really controls the pipeline about what procurements are being sequenced and at what point. So I can only deal with the cards I've been given.
That being the case, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Larry?
I would move the meeting be adjourned.
Is there a second? Brendan and
I
Jude.
see Mr. Loudy has jumped to the floor.
Okay, so
Second.
let me do the roll call then. Brendan?
Aye.
Judith? Judith sounds speechless. I think I saw her mouthing aye. Larry?
Aye.
Aye, yes.
Okay, and I'm in favor. Thanks, folks, and it's going to be the fourth Thursday next month, and you'll be hearing from me about a meeting within the next week or so.